Welcome to episode 290 of the Help Me With HIPAA podcast. I've been instructed to slow down. I talk too fast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs and Security First IT, and joining me is Donna Grindle of Garden. Good morning, Donna.
Elizabeth's going to love that.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, we have an automated tool that's supposed to listen to our voice and convert it to text and all that. And for some reason, it doesn't do very well with my voice or my style or my speed or something. Probably because I speak in Southernese or something. I don't know.
Well, you don't do more than me. You just get ramped up, I guess.
So anyway, I don't know that I can maintain that level of speech pattern. I just can't do it. So anyway, sorry, Elizabeth, you just have to deal with it.
But the good news is the reason we're doing this is so we'll have a new tool so that you can search across all of our episodes, see when we talked about something, and it'll say here, this episode, this timestamp, go do it.
Yeah, which is really cool because one of the beauties of a blog post is you can, search the post. Well, you can't search audio and video, but that's coming. So
yeah,
I know, really cool stuff.
I know. Maybe by the time this comes out. No.
Let's not be too optimistic. Not be too optimistic.
All right, let's say by March 1st, you'll be able to do that, David. Can you make that commitment?
By March 1st, somebody will be able to do that.
All right, there you go. Good enough.
But I tell you what I will do on February 23, 24, and 25, I'll be at the HIPAA boot camp.
There you go. Yes, and we have been doing a ton of work with the HIPAA boot camp, getting ready for our second virtual edition, which is, we learned a lot from those guys that have been so helpful working with us after August for us to make it better, to manage it virtually. And we're also updating it for all of the different changes with information blocking and the privacy rule NPRM that now went into the Federal Register on the 21st. So I was surprised to see that. But we, at some point, we're all going to have to deal with those things. We just don't know exactly when. So we're going to make sure we're covering those so that you're ahead of the game and preparing. And then, of course, recognize security practices. And we're going to explain how you can take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. We've even had
a lot of adding and changing and moving.
Yeah. We've even had people that took part in the last boot camp that's already signed up for this one.
Yeah.
So
because there's a lot different happening and they're like, yeah, we're going to need some more.
I think
or they just love spending time with us. I don't know which one it is.
I think it's one of those things where once you get to the end of the first one, you're like, okay, now I'm ready. Let's do this again.
Now I'm ready. Let's start over.
I know that's the way it was when I went through the training back 2012.
Yeah.
Went through training, and it was by the end of it, I was like, okay, I think I got it now. Let's do it again. I think I finally understand some of this stuff.
Yeah, that's why we're changing a lot of the things so that it's a little bit more self-study mixed in with live conversation. So we're learning.
Yeah, we're learning
Nobody
as we're
thought
learning
it was
you.
Possible.
All righty, and today we will be talking about, guess what? Phishing test report. So really cool report that came out that measured a lot of phishing and security awareness training stuff, and interesting, to say the least. Time for our favorite part, the HIPAA
Say what
segment. So this is interesting. So as I'm doing my morning ritual of looking at the news, I see a headline: a home security tech hacked into cameras to watch people undressing and having sex. And I immediately thought, this is HIPAA related.
I know. Right away, he sends it to me.
I sent it to Donna. I'm like, check this out. The first part about it that It always drives me crazy because anytime somebody does anything with technology, they're like, it's a hacker. Um, and I'm like, I'm reading the article. I'm like, this guy didn't hack anything.
No.
There's no hacking involved, even though the headline says it. What he did was he was somebody who installed the systems, and he just put his own information in so that he could remotely access it.
Mm-hmm.
So no hacking at all.
No,
But he would
he's abusing his privileges.
Yep. So he would come in, he would set up the alarm system with the cameras and all that, and then he would put his own email address in so that he could use his credentials to then access the remote feeds of these cameras. And according to the article, if it was a fine looking lady, then he made sure to document that so that he could come back in and look at later. Mm-hmm. And this happened for quite a long period of time. And I think to the tune of 9,600 times he accessed cameras. And of course, he worked there for a few years. And yep. So as horrible as this is a perfect example of an insider threat to privacy. We often talk about threat to security. Mm-hmm. This is a threat to privacy.
Yes.
Which is interesting. But it underlines things we talk about all the time, which is, for example, you need to have processes in place, not just policies, because the article is like, he did something against our policy. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but what did you do to prevent that or to catch
find it?
Right.
Yeah.
Or to notice that it's happening. You know, there again, we talk about that. The other thing too, is that he's been there for a while. And how many times do we hear that? He would never do that. He's been a loyal employee for 10 years. Mm-hmm. No, that doesn't make you exempt. And so, and how this relates to HIPAA is because we often hear about employees that are snooping through patient records.
Yes.
And this is no different. It is no different. It's an invasion of privacy.
Well, and the thing is that these are the one or two people. These don't make the news. And these are the ones that should make the news. But if you make the news, it invades people's privacy more.
Yeah.
So it's a tough place to be. But there are so many cases where just because I can look at something doesn't mean I should, number one. Or I allow everybody to look at everything, and then I don't monitor that. So I understand the cases where you have to, in some cases, allow people to look at multiple things because they do multiple jobs. You know, we don't live in a world where you do one job really anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that does just one job. But when
I don't know, you tell me that often. You had one job, David.
You had one job and you didn't do it. But when there is a case that pops up, almost always a person is involved in some sort of personal thing, or there's a high profile event and they scoop up all these people that were snooping into the details, like a car accident. If it's a famous person in a car accident and they say they took them to such and such hospital, I can guarantee you somebody with access to information in that hospital is going to be looking. And not just the ones that are supposed to. Mm-hmm. First, there's a guarantee because they have to if they're treating him. I win on the guarantee. But the problem is that they'll scoop up a ton of people when that happens. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you see it happen all the time. You know, there'll be 15, 20 people. And then they'll put it on social media or they'll talk about it with their friends or, you know, blah, blah.
Calm down, Donna. This is just Facebook.
I know, right? Oh, this it's not real.
It's not real life. This is Facebook.
I know. And so the thing, though, is that when you find those, and sometimes it'll be like their only infraction, but often there are people that have been doing it for years. Mm-hmm. You know, oh, well, I'm going to look up the medical records of this kid that's playing on my kid's soccer team because I think he's got some illness, or I want to see what their parents are doing, or The biggest ones, though, or involve ex-boyfriends, ex-girlfriends, ex-husbands, ex-wives, or even I want to date somebody, so I start stalking them in the medical records. Those happen as well.
Yeah, that's a legit reason too. But
That's
don't
what
do
they
it.
say.
But don't do it. Yeah, it's
I
like,
did. Yeah.
yeah, I want to see what kind of funk they might have.
Yeah. Well, and that happens, but almost always it involves some sort of interpersonal thing,
Mhm.
and it's not necessarily theirs. It's their best friends or their sisters or their brothers or something along those lines. Or they want to see what's going on with their neighbor, or they're in a lawsuit. And, this is where those things come up. And if you're going to open this up to everybody, you've got to find a way to audit better.
Mhm.
And everybody's like, well, that's just too hard to do. Okay, but doing nothing is not the answer to it's too hard to do. And only looking at VIPs is not the answer to it's too hard to do. And that's what a lot of people do. They only monitor anybody flagged as a VIP or the break the glass or whatever. They're not looking at the big picture. Whereas to me, what I say you should do if you're going to do that is that, once a month, you pull a list of accounts that had activity and you pick 50 of them and you go through and you see, what was that activity? Was it what it was supposed to be? Is it where it needs to be? And that's just got to be assigned. And if you're not going to have the resources to do it that way, or, look at the Sphere product or something like that. There's tons of them out there that, well, not tons, but there's plenty of options for you to evaluate that will take those logs that are being created by the EHRs and analyze every single access. And they'll flag things that look like anomalies. If you're not doing that, I can guarantee you somebody is abusing their privileges. And all you can hope is they're not using them to find ways in to monitor them via their cameras at home. Although, who knows? With all this medical, as we improve technology and we add more to capabilities for treating people at home, you know, what's going to happen?
Yeah, and don't forget your sanction policy.
Yeah. Because when you find them, everybody has to be treated the same according to the sanction policy. Everybody. Because we've had cases where even physicians have violated privacy. And then there were the privacy officer even told the physician, don't do that. And they
Mm.
knew better. And then they did it. And there were no repercussions. Actions have consequences. And no, it's not nice when they've worked there for years and years, but I'm pretty sure this guy doesn't work for the security company anymore.
No, I don't think so anymore. But
Yeah, you know.
the
So
question
there you
the
go.
question then becomes, did they remove his access?
Nothing nuts me up more. Please let me take them out. Please let me take them out. Please let me take them out. Okay, thank you. They're gone.
Yeah, yeah. So, in the case where we're talking about the security person, though, it's you're looking at the what happened to the story. He's looking at all these video feeds and how terrible it is. And first thing I'm thinking is, how did the company not catch this for so long?
Yep.
They obviously don't have a policy, or maybe a procedure. I know they have a policy in place, but they don't have a procedure in place to check this stuff out
Mm-hmm.
or do something. I mean, the fact that it went on for so long, how you got caught, I'm not sure. Maybe I didn't make it that far in the article because I was too busy focused on the other stuff. But anyway, there'll be a link to the article in the show notes, and you can read all about it there. But consider, when you read stuff like this, do consider, how does it affect other things that you're dealing with. With this particular article, had nothing to do with healthcare, nothing to do with HIPAA, but yet I can see how it can. And so
Yeah.
that's how you know that you're deep in the HIPAA.
Well, and that's a great opportunity to do an awareness thing,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yep.
You take that article, which people, they're going to want to read that. David clicked on it.
Yeah.
So
I'm like, how do I do this?
Unfortunately, he already knows how. But
I'm watching you,
the
Donna.
there's just a little part of me that went, do I have all my security? Have I checked it recently? There's just a little part of me.
I've been in your network.
Yeah. Well, you have only because I allowed it.
I'm sure you monitored all my traffic too.
But the important thing that everybody needs to understand is that this access abuse is becoming more and more of a problem. It is not going to get better until you do things that stop it. And just having a policy is like, you know, you got to remember, it's like you got to treat it as if you're managing teenagers.
Yeah, it's
Right.
funny because I
If
had
you
a
just get in that mindset, and some of them are very mature for their age, and there you just have the policy, they're going to follow the rules.
yeah,
You
I had
know,
a conversation with the guy the other day, as CIO, and we were talking about removing people from the server when they got terminated, and so we were talking about a problem they were having. He said, "Well, I just need to create a written policy and make sure this is getting followed." I'm like, "Yeah, that works." You can't just create a policy.
yeah, really and truly. I mean, the bottom line is if you had a policy that your kids had to be home by midnight, but you never enforced it, time they would be okay. But you'd probably have at least one that's going to push the limit and try to drag the others along with them, probably with triplets. So, um, but it's the same kind of thing. And that's the way you have to look at it is I, yes, I would love to assume that everybody is a responsible adult, but you know what it says about assume.
Mm-hmm.
So don't do it.
Don't do
Don't
it.
do it. You
All right.
can't assume and you must enforce.
All right.
There you
Speaking
go.
of not doing and assuming and enforcing, let's talk about phishing because wow,
Yeah.
so there's well, I'll let you describe it, but there's a thing that you tricked your team into participating in, which was a global phishing tournament.
Yeah.
PH
It
phishing.
was part of the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm.
And a company called Terra Nova Security, which they do this, they host a gone phishing tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And you sign your company up and you put in all the email addresses and they work directly with you to set it up so that you're getting all the information and you make sure it's all set up. And then they say, okay, well, this is what it's going to look like. And, eventually your people will be phished. And I'm like, okay,
Cool.
yeah. And then frankly, I'm busy and I forgot about it. And then all of a sudden, somebody mentions they're talking to each other about it. And, did you see this? Did you see that? And I'm like acting like I'm not hearing. And then Krista sends it to me and I'm like, yeah, it looks like spam. And didn't say anything because I mean, it came from Microsoft. Is what it looked like. And it looked like it was coming from us about a new remote work policy, which would make sense for everybody in 2020
Mm-hmm.
to have a new remote work policy. And so it says, here's the new remote work policy. And they asked me, did you send one out? And I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And I didn't fess up for the longest time because given like all of their email addresses, and we have tons of them for all the different lines of business and the different domain names. And so even some of their, anyway, they were getting multiple ones. And finally, in another discussion about it, when I was getting stuff ready, we're all on a call together. I'm getting stuff ready. I said, oh, by the way, y'all were part of a phishing tournament. And they're like, and then everybody starts arguing, trying to remember whether they clicked on anything. And I can't believe you did this. Well, yeah, I can. But the good news is when I got the report back, because then they're all worried, they got the report back and I haven't even had a chance to tell them, nobody clicked. Nobody clicked.
Oh, good job.
Yeah, they opened it, but nobody clicked. And they didn't open all of them when they got more than one.
All right.
So
So let's see who did click.
yeah, that was the scary part. So I was glad that my team helped improve the numbers.
Mm-hmm. Not by a lot, apparently.
No, well, there's not that many of us to be able to do it. And, you know, I, well, first of all, cause I got all these charts in here and I didn't think about putting them in order.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we're going to,
let me also lay the groundwork for something, because as you're listening to this, you're thinking, I'm in healthcare, so I'm interested in what healthcare, how they did, or I'm in
yeah.
IT, so I'm interested in IT.
Mhm.
But let me challenge you, since are we yet? Can we say post SolarWinds hack? Can we say that yet?
Well, yeah, we
We're in
hope
the
so.
throes of it. So anyway, as we move into 2021 and supply chain threats are definitely a real thing. We've talked about that for a long time, but I think people are finally catching on. So look at everything we're talking about. Don't just look at the industry you're in, look at every industry, because if these other industries are part of your supply chain, then you now know how much of a threat they possibly are to you by doing business with them.
Yep. And that's something that it is time. We haven't done a good job of pointing that out and looking at it often enough. So we're both committed to doing a better supply chain analysis,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we were better than most. So
Yeah.
hopefully everybody else will get up with us there.
Well,
But
before we started, we were talking about trust but verify. But our new saying is, we're never going to trust you, and we're still going to verify you.
well, that's why in IT, everybody talks now. They talk about zero trust.
Exactly.
Zero trust. Trust no one.
Yeah. Even after we verify it, we're still not going to trust you. It's just not going to happen.
So in this, the way this thing worked is it was global. And so they broke it down: Africa, Asia, Pacific, Europe, North America, South and Latin America. So nobody did really well.
Let's start out by saying it was bad.
Well, there is one very important thing that you can quickly tell by looking at all these charts and numbers, is that if they ever click, you're in trouble.
That's
Right?
very true.
Yeah, if you got to stop them from clicking, because
Mhm.
the ones that click, once that happens, things are not going to go well.
Mm-mm.
So they cannot click. That's the most important thing. And uh, believe it or not, that North America, which this is a Canadian company, so we'd like to recognize that this is not just the United States, people. It's North America.
Wait a minute. What?
Wait, what? But it was the worst.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And that was not a good feeling when we're looking at all those numbers. It's like,
So it wasn't us, like the US. It had to be Canada that did all this.
maybe Mexico. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
got to be them. We're better than that.
exactly.
Yeah, or not. Because these don't look randomly different than the ones that just are US, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the interesting thing was that they broke it down by size of company, by region, by industry, and then they would break it down further within those on who clicked, and if they did click, there's they didn't click, they clicked but they didn't submit information, or they also submitted information.
Mm-hmm.
And it's clear the minute they click, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter industry or anything. And here's the scary thing, is that we know it's gotten worse in 2020.
Well, that's a big part of it, because these charts compare 2020 to 2019. And so, with all this work that we're doing, at least you and I, to get the word out to talk about security awareness training, to provide security awareness training, to do phishing, all this effort that we're doing, we're like, surely we're going to see every year slightly improve.
Right.
No. 2020 was drastically worse than 2019 by a long shot. It was
By
worse than
a lot.
I was like, wow, we went completely in the toilet in 2020 in every way you can imagine.
Yeah, now and some of it may be because of what they used, but guess what? The criminals would think the same way.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Used to we'd say criminals ain't very smart, but well, that's changed.
yeah, they
And
have degrees in psychology now, I'm sure.
yeah, I mean, with the proliferation of these attacks being done by, state actors and all this other kind of stuff, I mean, it's getting complicated.
Hmm. So, when we look at just the change year over year, let's start with that. So, between 2019 and 2020, those who clicked the link.
Mm-hmm.
So, in 2019, 11.2% clicked the link. And thankfully, they're using those point percentages because there's a couple places where we slid by half a point to get
Yeah.
out of it. Um, but that went up to 19.8. So essentially, it jumped 9%. So 10, roughly, you're jumping 9%. That's a big chunk to go up. Now, of those who clickers who submitted the password.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of the total last year or 2019, 1.8% actually submitted their password out of the total. So they got them to click and they submitted their password. Only 1.8%. It jumped to 13.4 actually submitted their password.
Wow.
That is huge. But here is the absolute terrifying part about once they click, you're in trouble, is of the ones who clicked, right? So they clicked, and some people would click on it and go, this doesn't look right, and they get out.
Mm-hmm.
So they still counted as they clicked. So the 19.8% that clicked, of those in 2020, 67.5% of those actually submitted their password.
Mm. And if you want,
So
and if you want a baseline for that, in 2019, it was only 16.2%.
right.
So we jumped from 16.2 to 67.5.
Exactly. So that 9% jump of those who clicked were even worse than last year.
Golly. So yeah,
Right.
if you can't stop them from clicking, you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious when you look at this. I mean, even last year, you could kind of see it. There's still 16.2 of the 11% actually submitted their password, but it just blew up this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not quite sure. Is it just the sheer volume? Is it because there's so much new information? Was it that this was just a well-formed? And by the way, this is all published. So guess what? The bad guys know it.
Yeah. I do wonder too if it has something to do with remote working from home. I think people have a very different mindset when they're home working
Yeah.
than when they're in an office environment working.
Yeah. It's almost like they feel like that the rules are tighter at work.
Yeah. Or
They're
like,
the same.
yeah. Or they're saying something like, well, I can see my corporation or my job or my practice being attacked, but I'm at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they don't understand that the email's the same
Yeah.
either way.
It's not different in between there at all.
Yeah, but I just wonder that. I don't have any proof, not that I need it, but I can speculate. That's a lot
Uh,
better than assuming.
And before we go too far, everybody's like, well, that must have been a bunch of big companies.
Mm.
Let's just get that out of the way because they do say, does size matter is one of their topics. uh, and I love that it unearthed a similar truth in response to the age-old question whether bigger is better. Does it really matter? Uh, the a little, you know, the small businesses fared best, but when you're the best of the worst, is that the best? And it's always like I've followed basketball and see March Madness and all of that, and you've got the NCAA tournament, and then you got the NIT tournament, and people are like, "What's the NIT tournament? What if you win that?" I'm like, "Well, you're the best of the ones that lost."
Your
That
best
didn't make it into you're not the best of the worst, but you're best of the losers that didn't make it in because they were beat by the other people. It gets complicated. But anyway, it's the size range. You look at they did 1 to 99, so they really looked at small companies. And then 100 to 499, 500 to 299. So once you get over 500, then it's kind of lumping them together, and then over 3,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not a lot better because 20% of the 1 to 99 still click the link, right? They still
Yeah.
clicked it. And of that group, 11.6% still submitted the password.
Mm-hmm.
But the only good thing is that of the ones who clicked, it was slightly less than the 60 something. It was 58.2%. But it's still, if they click, you're in trouble. If they click, the vast majority of them are going to fall for it. Now, when you get over 100 employees, they're actually the worst, 100 to 499. Because of the ones that click, so 17% click, that was the highest. And 24%, I'm sorry, 24% clicked, 17 actually submitted their passwords of the whole group, but 71% of those who clicked gave their password up. So really, if you have between 100 and 499 employees, and actually 500 to 299, so less than 3,000, those are actually the worst too, 100 to 3,000. But that doesn't mean anybody else is better,
Right.
dramatically. So with that in mind, size helps. I think a lot of it on that 100 to 499
Mm-hmm.
is that you think what you did when there's less than 100 will work when there's more.
Yeah, that's possible.
No, maybe.
Well, let's look at the program type by vertical, because I thought this was interesting when you look at, what are people actually doing? Because if people are failing these things, then my
Yeah,
first
what's
question is,
happening?
my first question, what are you doing to try to prevent it? And
Right.
and then my next question is, well, how did my sector fare? Because I'm in IT, and we're IT. We do everything. It's
Yeah.
fantastic when it comes.
We
No,
know overconfidence is a problem. Yeah, go on.
it is. It is in IT because oftentimes they're like, oh, I'd never fall for phishing. And then you look at the stats, and you're like, oh wow, you're not doing very not much better than some of the other industries. But when we look at the program type by vertical, we have actually the one. This was kind of, I don't know, shocking to me, maybe not to you, but the vertical that's doing the most security awareness training and phishing testing is transportation.
Or that they say that that's what they're doing. And, to me, I was surprised
Mm-hmm.
that you don't see that the number one that's doing it is finance or healthcare or something like that.
No, unfortunately, down near the bottom, healthcare tied in last place with 14%
Yep.
doing awareness and phishing, and they tied with education. and not to be laughing, because IT came in third place
There
at
you go.
30%. So the people that we talk to the most, healthcare and IT, congratulations, stink when it comes to security awareness training and phishing training.
And ironically, education is the worst at education.
That is true. So, I don't know. I guess we fall into the education category in this podcast, don't we? We were educating you about IT and healthcare. So,
Yeah, it's all
anyway,
stacked against us right there.
terrible, just terrible.
But the good news, I mean, when you start breaking it down by industry, of those, the ones that click,
Okay.
the ones that clicked in industry, at least with those in there, they were the below average group for education, finance and insurance, and healthcare. But where did IT land on the percentage that clicked?
So, IT, being the wonderful people we are, we were just above average. And that's not a good thing on this
That's
chart.
not a good average.
Yeah, it's of the average of people that failed,
Right.
we were slightly better at failing.
Yeah. And then you've got service provider, which, it was up there too. So, but, we talk about, you just pointed out that transportation was doing the most education,
Yeah,
yet
but
they came in second in clicking.
yeah, which then makes you still slap your forehead. It's like, wait a minute. They provide the most training and phishing testing, but they were second in the number of people who click, which is, and then you're going, what's the point?
Exactly.
Are they answering the questionnaire incorrectly? The training obviously is not working.
Yeah.
So
Is it the type of training? Are they doing the same thing over and over
I bet
and
you,
not doing these custom ones?
I
Because
bet you what
that's
they're
what
doing.
matters.
They're doing we have annual security awareness training because that's what is required. I
You're right.
bet you that's what it is, because as I've said 1,028 times on this podcast, you cannot create a culture of anything in your organization doing it once a year. It's not going to happen. You're
No.
not training anybody one time and nothing.
There you heard it the 1,029th time.
Now, yes, 1,029 times you've heard this. So stop with we do HIPAA training annually. Really? What a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
Let me call you out on that BS. Do training all the time.
Yes. And don't just do, their point is that you've got to have the testing and the awareness.
Yeah.
There's two pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just do one.
Yeah. We did the
And-
training. Okay. But are you testing the training to see if it's sticking?
Well, and that also brings up, because they do break down that training by size of organization.
Mm-hmm.
And, the big organizations, 72% of those, they had some sort of program, only 19% in 1 to 99. And then it jumps to all of 44% in under 500. So when you look at that, it really, well, it's 19, 44, 52, boom, 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 and then 72 jumps way out.
Mm-hmm.
So again, less than 3,000 it's getting better as you move up, but it's not starting where it needs to be so that it's better. 72% isn't fantastic. You'd like to see more, but certainly not 19%.
Yeah. So those are the percentages of people who clicked. Now, one of the other things we talked about
Well, those are
is,
the percentages of awareness programs
okay,
in the businesses. Now, people who click,
yep. So we talked
if
about the people who clicked.
Mhm.
So IT is just above average and failing. Okay, but here's the next one we talked about. We hadn't talked about who did it, but we talked about people who clicked and submitted passwords.
right,
Bad enough that you clicked, but you
yep,
actually gave somebody access to your information. Okay,
hmm
you gave them a password. All right, let's look at who did this, because again, it almost looks identical to the other one.
yep,
Um, so the winner is public sector. They more often did. And here we
hmm
are again with transportation. Guess what? Not only were they the most to click, but they were the most to actually give away their password
yep.
and the most to do the training. But here we are, precious IT. Guess what? You again are just above average and failing. And IT people giving away passwords. Oh my gosh.
That's even more terrifying, which is why the supply chain thing. Hello, solar winds. Let's just
Yeah.
say that and move on, right?
I'm
I
like,
mean,
okay, think about this. Yes, supply chain. So let's say you're not an IT person listening. And if you are an IT person listening, sorry, going to step on your toes, but I am an IT person, so I can do that. But you have IT, they're providing IT services for your practice or business. They have keys to the kingdom. They can access everything. And guess what? They didn't fare, they fared less than average in failing when it comes to clicking and giving out passwords. What if I had clicked and gave out a password to access the very thing that they can then access all of your information as my client?
and all of the clients.
You know, the clients of the clients and the
Yep.
clients of the clients of the clients.
Yeah, it goes way bad real quick.
Yeah. So IT is super important. And you can't not give them the access that they need. Unfortunately, you got to be able to do it. But man, IT people, us, we've got to be super diligent in what we do, how we do
Mhm.
it. We should be better than everybody else in this stuff because of what we're entrusted with. If somebody hacks my local pharmacy or a doctor's office here in town, chances are they're probably not going to get much further than that one place. If they hack me as an IT company, they're going to get access to hundreds of people.
Mhm. If
It's
not more.
it's not going to be pretty.
Right. And ironically, as education did the least in education, they were also the least likely to give up their password when they clicked.
So hey,
Yeah. They're
I
just
mean,
terrified. See? They're just terrified. You just
yeah.
scare them.
So we're
Yep.
not going to teach you how to do it, but we will fire your butt if you do it.
Sanction policies work.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And
you know,
healthcare actually, no, not terrible, but still terrible.
yeah.
They were fourth from the bottom in the number of people who didn't give up the password.
Yeah. So again, it's the same story that we see over and over and over. The bottom line is if you click, you're in trouble.
Mhm.
So we got to stop them from clicking. Or if you say, I've done everything I can to keep them from clicking, then you got to focus on once they click, how do you stop them from giving it up? Because clearly the ones that you could stop from clicking, maybe you already have. So you've got to now keep that going, but then assume that they will. And how do you get them to not give it up at that point?
Yeah. And just to throw a percentage on it, um, the clickers who submitted passwords in IT, 69.1%. Wow.
Yeah.
69.1% of the people who clicked submitted passwords.
hmm And
Mm.
bottom line, it doesn't matter who clicks. If they click, the percentage, the likelihood of them giving it up is very high.
Mm-hmm. Healthcare, 67%.
And they were doing pretty good.
Yeah. 67. So you can see, as we started out earlier to say, if somebody clicks, it is not going to look good from there.
Yeah, that's where the problem is. So we've done a ton of stuff. We're trying to keep them from clicking. That's where everybody's at. I'm trying to keep them
Mhm.
from clicking. But back to having that program of awareness training with the simulations that are testing them. We
Yeah.
know where the big dent is in people not doing training because North America is dramatically less in training, awareness, and testing compared to the rest of the world. I mean, you're talking about, uh, let's see, the rest of the world, the highest percentage that don't do it
Mhm.
in the rest of the world is 8%. So you got like 6, 7, 8, and then South America, 2. They're all doing it except for that small number. 27% of North America not doing it.
Mhm.
None.
Yeah. Well, they say quote unquote other program. They have an other program.
Yeah, yeah, other program percentage. So it's not awareness in phishing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
they're clearly it's not awareness in phishing. But there you go.
yeah. And this is why, we jumped on the bandwagon of saying, look, this is human risk management. This is no longer security awareness training.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You got to change your thoughts on this. And it is not a once a year program. It's not, oh gosh, we got to do security awareness training. No, this is risk management, human risk management. Take it
Yes.
seriously.
Well, and that gets leadership's attention more than security awareness training.
Mm-hmm.
It's another training thing where they're not going to be working.
Yeah. Well, there's a difference between saying training and
Mhm.
risk management.
Yep.
That's a big difference.
Yeah. Well, and I did like the point that they put here. Where's this paragraph? Conversely, sectors like education and healthcare lagged farther behind, with only 14% in either category currently deploying both types of initiatives. Surprisingly, only 30% of organizations in the information technology category offered that ideal combination to their users.
Hmm.
Huh. Just saying. The thing is, healthcare, and a lot of people in the rest of the world, healthcare is considered public sector.
Yeah.
So we don't know. Usually, when you see healthcare in a global thing, it's mostly US.
Right.
So we're not sure how that was classified, but let's assume that the vast majority that is the number in healthcare is US healthcare. And they're in that 14% number. It's required under HIPAA.
Mm-hmm.
It's required. Security awareness is required under HIPAA. Now, maybe they said they did security awareness, but they don't do phishing training. I don't know. But it was, it's a big picture thing of if we know this is the number one way that they're attacking, other than IT doesn't have something secured. That's not something that my average employee can deal with. My average employee can deal with the social engineering and phishing uh, kind of attacks, whether it's phishing, smishing, vishing. Uh, there's a lot of them now.
Yeah. There's a lot of ishings.
Ishings. But if you train for one and let them know there's all these other ways, that really helps. But unfortunately, if you're not training them at all,
Mhm.
then there's just got to be. How many times do you sit through training and then I ask you 2 days later what was in it, and you're like,
Yeah.
But if there was a quiz, I remember it. Right. So I take a quiz. But if there's a quiz and then later all of a sudden stuff's popping up and I learn about it, I always envision like a big room full of cubicles like you used to see, which we don't see anymore, but a big room full of cubicles. And you had that gopher thing where people would pop their heads up, right,
Yeah.
and say stuff. When a phishing test goes out, that's what happens. Heads start
Mhm.
popping up,
Yep.
and that's why we don't
Did you get
test
that email?
everybody.
Did you get
Did
that
you?
email? Did you get the email?
And it's usually the person that clicked. right?
Please tell me you got the same email.
Yeah. We did it. We did one time a phishing test on a client, and like they knew it was coming that we would be phishing testing.
Mm.
I guess it's a go thing, but one of the members of leadership clicked, learned it was phishing, fell for it, and then forwarded it to the whole company and said, "Don't click on this." Um, so I'm not sure how I still don't know how to quantify that. You know, you failed, but at least you stopped everybody else from failing. And then, of course, because you sent it, some people still clicked.
So,
Why not?
so here's the story, and I think I've told this before, but it bears repeating.
Mhm.
And this was a prospect I talked to of ours, not a client. But they had an incident with a previous IT company where one of their users called and said, I think I have an email that may have a malicious link in it. And I want you guys to let me know if this is spam or phishing or whatever. And so the guy says, sure, let me log into your computer. So he logs in to the user's computer and he looks at it and he goes, yeah, that does look kind of suspicious. Let's click on the link and see what happens. And so he clicks on the link in the email. And and she was telling me the story, and my mouth was like yours, Donna. It's like
I,
wide open. I'm like, are you
I,
kidding me? That's what they did. And this wasn't a fly by night IT company. This was a big, big IT conglomerate. If I said the name, you would know.
wow.
And I was like, that's sad. You know, the user actually caught that something was suspicious,
And
called
then IT clicked on it.
on IT, and IT clicked on, logged in and clicked on it for her. So just be aware, craziness
No,
can happen.
no. Yeah. So I guess the important thing we know here is human behavior is what we've talked about all day. And you've got a lot of human risk management. And one, you've got to have the security awareness, but you also have to have privacy awareness and privilege awareness. You have the privilege of this level of access in order to do your job. You do not have this privilege to abuse it. And if you abuse it, you know, you're going to get burned.
Mhm.
That's hot. Don't touch it. What do you mean? But I think the bigger picture is it's human risk management, whether it's privacy or security that we're dealing with now. And if we start to look at it from that perspective, no, people aren't going to know what we're talking about. But those of us who are doing it, if we start to think about it that way,
Mhm.
that, we're identifying potential risks and trying to figure out, are they going to open that attachment? Are they going to link to it? Or, is it one of the drive-by URL things? Or, oh, it says that I need to let me run this script. Okay. You know, so it's a big thing and a big problem. And if we keep ignoring it, it clearly will get worse.
Oh yeah. Yep. It will.
So,
And with everybody working from home, I mean, you look, everything that's happening right now and has been happening for a while, it puts companies, especially small ones, it puts them focusing on all of these other things. But you've got people that are working from home. They're going to be sharing information with other people, other vendors. They may be using their home computers because you didn't have the ability to give them office computers to use. I
mhm.
mean, it's the variables have multiplied by a lot, but you've
Yep.
got to take the time to incorporate some type of effective training program and then test that training program. Otherwise, you're going to fail. And we will be talking about you in a future episode.
So you pointed out that Terra Nova Security, they said we can't speak to the unique realities of every participating organization, but they did make some logical inferences. And you grabbed that, and I thought it was really good. So you want to cover those? just to close us out.
Sure.
I thought it was pretty good stuff.
Yep. So the first one there, smaller organizations may not have dedicated IT departments or internal resources to dedicate to the appropriate time and energy in planning and executing a full-fledged security awareness training program with phishing simulations. So yeah, that's a problem. You don't have IT or you don't have the resources, but this stuff is not expensive.
Yeah. There's some, if you're tiny, there's even free ones.
Yeah, there absolutely are. So, find them. They're there. Reach out to Donna. She'll give you a list. But yeah, even if you're going to do the really nice ones and the paid ones, they're not expensive to do. So the cost, I don't think cost is a factor anymore.
Compared to these numbers and giving up the passwords?
No.
Go with risk management.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I can tell you, we had somebody call us recently and they said somebody clicked on something, gave somebody a password, and they said, how much is it going to cost us, to have somebody go in and just check things out? And I can tell you it was more than a couple $1,000s.
Yeah. It's not cheap once it happens to prove that nothing really bad went on.
Yeah. They could have paid for security awareness training and phishing for probably a decade for what they paid. So, and this is a very small organization. So anyway, the second point they made was that large organizations, while possibly better positioned when it comes to staff and resources, may lack communication needed across the business units to obtain universal training program buy-in. So yes, is more people, more complexity.
Culture.
Yep.
Culture matters, just like you said.
Absolutely. And then the last one made this point already, which was the rising popularity of remote workforces almost certainly means that employees will be interacting and sharing information with external contributors, vendors, partners more frequently. This reality only makes effective phishing training more critical because of the increased variables that are not within its control.
Boom.
Yep. People are working outside of the network now. And it's a problem, but you know what? It's not going to go away. So you better find a way to deal with it.
Yep. And they clearly are interested in what the remote working policy is, because that's what they were clicking on.
Yep. All right, folks, that is our show for today. So remember to follow us and share us out on your favorite social media site. Rate us on the podcast app. We always need your help to spread the word. So remember, for Donna and myself, HIPAA, it's not about compliance. It's about patient care.